Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Sunday for Sunday, December 5th, 2021. We've got another great show for you this week. We've got members of academia, financial services, and the media standing by to analyze all the news in finance, wellness, lifestyle, tech, and so much more. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday. Well, let's kick things off with a look at technology, consumer products, and all things in between. Joining us on the line, he is the managing editor for The Street. That's right, Daniel Klein is joining us. Dan, great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Happy Hanukkah. I think it's like the 13th or 14th night of Hanukkah. I'm very unclear on this.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah to you as well, Dan. Lashana Tova and all that kind of good stuff. Actually, that's the Jewish New Year. All right, Dan, let's break it down because Hanukkah, as big as a holiday it is, there's some other important news. Twitter has a new CEO. Jack Dorsey is stepping down.
Yeah, so this is a confusing one. Jack Dorsey fought very hard to be brought back as Twitter CEO. And, he's also the CEO of Square. And I never thought this made a lot of sense. I thought you could get the wisdom of Jack Dorsey by having him be executive chairman or calling him chief innovation officer or just calling him Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter, who people will probably listen to at Twitter. Here's the problem. Twitter is an absolute beast that has never really figured out monetization. I'm on Twitter all day long. There's a large financial, very uplifting community compared to most of social media, like a really fun group of people to talk to. And I like being on Twitter, and I'm not even sure how they make money off me. I don't see ads. I don't know how it works. So I do think this is good for Twitter. The new gentleman is becoming the CEO, has been a behind-the-scenes guy. He's more of a get-it-done type of person. And maybe that's what Twitter needs instead of a media personality. But honestly, if I'm Twitter, I'm like, I don't know, begging every person who used to work at Facebook and ad sales to come work for me because they have a lot of inventory. They have a lot of interest. And advertising done right. And what do I mean by that? We've talked about this a lot. If an ad is something you actually want, so you and your wife are looking to go out to dinner and an ad pops up and it's a brand new seafood place that's affordable, you'll be like, wow, like that solves my need. Like that's a great ad. Twitter, I think, has more information to do that than just about anybody. Twitter knows an awful lot about me, and I don't understand why it isn't doing a really good job serving me ads I'm more than happy to get. So I think there's a lot of potential that could be unlocked there. And maybe Jack Dorsey having dual priorities, maybe he was standing in the way.
Yeah, one thing I could not stand about Jack Dorsey is that beard. I mean, it just was so long and it looks so unkept. But in all, I'm just
Jeff,
joking.
I'm the last person who could talk about corporate appearances.
That's true, and I'm just joking. So for all the hate mail comes, but look, I do agree. I'm a do your job kind of guy. So let's talk more walk. Maybe this is where Twitter needs to be, given all the extraneous conversations that it has been involved in over the years. I mean, I've seen Jack Dorsey testify in front of Senate and the House. Maybe they need someone a little bit more low key and actually doing things.
Yeah, on the political side, this is an impossible job. Imagine, Jeff, having to and you and I both play it very down the middle. We try to not be political in anything we do.
It's a lose-lose proposition if you do.
But we don't run an open community of opinion where anything is open to interpretation. I've talked about this before. When I worked at the Boston Globe, which is perceived to be a liberal media outlet, I could literally post a story on Boston.com about a new Dunkin' Donuts donut, and I would be perceived of bias by both sides. I didn't know that there was a right and left side of the new donut, but apparently there always was. So if you're the CEO of Twitter, you are going to be dealing with perceived biases, what should be taken down, what's considered free speech. That is such an unbelievably difficult road to navigate that I don't envy anyone on this job, because even if you're doing it with the best of intentions, which I don't think social media has largely done, but let's pretend you are, or you put in some sort of impartial board or whatever it is. I struggled with this a lot in my daily newspaper editor days, just in the comments section. What's hateful? What's okay? What's an opinion that I don't agree with, but is is still just an opinion. It's all very, very tricky. That being said, there's an awful lot of Twitter that is just smart people talking about sports or stocks or Hawkeye on Disney Plus or whatever it might be. And it feels like they should be able to monetize that in a way that they really haven't done. I know we think of social media as this giant cesspool. And, we've all seen Jeff, the friend of ours, like, oh, I'm off of Facebook. Well, you know what's on my Facebook and Twitter? People I like, comedians I follow, I don't know, sports teams I want to know things about. You can shut out the negativity. I mute people all the time. I'll look at feeds that I follow and be like, nope, don't want to follow that anymore. Like, give me a little more this comedian or this, funny writer, whatever it might be. We create our own social media experiences to a point, and I do think that Twitter could do better with that and make more money on it. And again, maybe this is the path toward doing that.
All right, Dan, let's shift gears because you brought up streaming. Our friends at Deloitte, used to be called Deloitte & Touche. Many people may not even remember that, but they are predicting that streaming services will see 150 million cancellations next year as the churn heats up. I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe next week we should do a catch-up on what Touche is up to. But
touche, my friend.
So
Sorry.
Here's my concern about numbers like this. I don't disagree with this number, but there's no nuance in their story. At no point do they say, like, yeah, Netflix is expected to experience X amount of churn. Disney is so here's what I think will happen based on what you see with churn. Netflix and Disney and Amazon Prime for a different reason. Nobody cancels Amazon Prime because they're not getting Amazon Prime for video, no matter how much they like it. They're getting it for package delivery. Those three services are going to continue to have minimal churn, in my opinion. Everybody else is going to be an as-you-need-it service. So maybe you're going to get Peacock because it's a British Premier League season, and you want to follow my brother's team, Tottenham Hotspur. Maybe it's one show on HBO Max that you want to watch, and you just want to, you want to binge the new Sex and the City spinoff, and you just wait till that's all out, and you join that for a month. I think there's going to be an awful lot of that. I'm guilty of a little bit of that. I might sometimes be on the road and be like, boy, I really want to watch so-and-so, and I missed it. Wait, what if I got this for a week or a month or whatever it is? Or, hey, I want to watch NBA games, and there's no TNT in my hotel room. Oh, wait, if I reignite my Sling subscription for $35, I can watch games for the next 3 nights, and that's totally worth it to me. I think this is kind of a misplayed number, and at the bottom of the story, they do say that kind of the good news, the silver lining they call it, is that nothing is permanent. And that's going to be the reality. If you're the lesser subscription services, and I'll put HBO in there because I don't think HBO has a lot of hits right now. But if you're Discovery Plus or whatever it might be, Paramount Plus, all of the various pluses that these happen to be, I think you're going to have to come up with some sort of pricing scheme to give people an incentive. So what would I do? If I'm $5.99 a month, maybe after 6 months, I'm $2.99 for 3 months. Like, I would give you some reason, some sort of loyalty benefit, and they know their data. They can analyze and say, all right, the average person subscribes for 3 months out of the year at $5.99 a month. If we could give them $2.99 a month, we'd double the money. We found that, at my former employer, that if you let people lock in at a lower price, we tripled our price. And if you let people lock in at a lower price, they will stay loyal. I'm trying to thread a line here about what I can share and what I can't. So I do think we're going to see much more dynamic pricing, much more clever, but it's not going to be your Netflixes and your Disney Pluses. Sure, Disney has some volatility with Hotstar in India, which is a lower price product. It's also a low margin product. The number doesn't matter that much. So this is a headline. I have my team at the street actually working on a variation of this today. But that being said, I do think they're overplaying it when it comes to the biggest players, the ones that are actually driving the industry.
Well, look, it grabbed headlines. It was in the Hollywood Reporter, so the PR folks at Deloitte did their job, and we're talking about it. Dan Klein, always a pleasure chatting with you. Great to talk streaming and Twitter today, and people can certainly follow you at the street and online. Great to talk to you. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you again soon.
We'll talk faxes and MySpace next week. I'll see you then, Jeff.
All right, MySpace. Talk to you soon, bud. Bye-bye. Welcome back, and now we're going to talk talk a little healthcare. Joining us on the line, she is the healthcare editor for Business Insider. We're talking about Lydia Ramsey Flanzer. Lydia, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a busy week.
It has been a busy week. So let's just dive right in. What's the latest on the Omicron variant and the ability to treat symptoms and, I guess, stop the spread?
Yeah, it was kind of a shock to see the headlines coming out over Thanksgiving and Black Friday as someone who was taking a little bit of time off to see, we finally have a new variant emerging. We went through this when Delta started emerging, initially kind of seen in India and spread from there. But that was back in May. It's been more than 6 months since we've had our last kind of variant of concern.
Mm-hmm.
So when South Africa reported that they were seeing these cases popping up in Southern Africa, they're so good at sequencing. It was only a matter of time before we were going to start seeing them elsewhere. So I think the U.S. has detected a bit of cases, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it kind of, we hear about it a little bit more over the next coming weeks. To your question about what we know about it and what it means for symptoms and things like that, there's still a lot we don't know, right? We're a week into this, and I feel like the sweet spot for when we start to get the lab tests kind of evaluating it or, really seeing the proof play out in cases is about like 2 to 4 weeks out. So there's a lot we can talk about, but there's a lot we also don't know, which is, of course, kind of frustrating.
And just based on what we know and what you've read, let's just talk about South Africa, which is where I guess it emerged. I guess that's the current thought process. So
it was where it was first detected.
Where it was first detected.
So
yeah. So what are some of the symptoms, and how is it different than other variants? Do we know that?
We don't know a ton, because South Africa has been really good, and Southern Africa, not just South Africa, the country, they're really good at sequencing these things. They were able to catch it in a way that, the U.S. and Europe hadn't. So a lot of the cases I believe they were seeing were mild, but that doesn't tell us a whole lot, right? We know that with, the initial kind of virus and then subsequent variants, we can see kind of symptoms all across the gamut. Like it can put you in the hospital if you're unvaccinated,
mm-hmm.
Or immunocompromised, or it can just be like you lose your sense of smell for a few days. It really is variable, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that here for Omicron too. It's a little early to say, this will be a much more mild variant, or this will be a much more deadly variant. We'll know that over the coming months. But a big thing I've been thinking about and something that we do have the power over is to get boosted. I got boosted about 2 weeks ago, and it stunk, but I did it, and it feels good to feel a little bit more protected as new variant starts to bear down.
Now, are there, thanks for that, Lydia. So are there travel restrictions that people who might be either coming to the U.S., if they're listening to this internationally, or they're thinking about traveling abroad from the U.S., there must be different protocols in place now that this has been detected?
Yeah, over the past 2 years, when we've seen kind of travel restrictions put in place, I think there have been a lot that have stayed in place over the past couple of years. I know that the Biden administration was considering, if not implementing some. There's like something really tricky about those, right? Like the variant is ostensibly already here, and it's just a matter of sequencing it and finding it. So I'm not sure how much the travel advisories are going to do, but yeah, for those traveling, I know especially those traveling around the holidays coming up to Europe and elsewhere, I believe the thinking hasn't changed, that it's mostly, get tested, and there's a lot of testing protocols and quarantine protocols for some countries. But the best as I know, they're not, I believe, I was reading headlines today that there's no domestic travel warnings or that are different than what we have had, or no international travel warnings that are different than what we've had.
And are there, I'm looking across as I look out my window, we have Bank of America Stadium, which is where the Carolina Panthers play, but this weekend it's holds 70,000 people. But this week they're having the ACC championship. So, wearing masks, I'm thinking that the same protocols that we had in place prior to this emergence of this variant would apply, right? So, be wary of, being maintain distance. I would think that all those things probably still apply.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in some ways we're in a better spot than we were almost 2 years ago, right? We have vaccines, we have a better understanding of the protections the mask can provide, we have a better understanding of how this virus transmits itself, and what the symptoms look like. So, we have a lot more better access to testing as well. So keeping those things in mind, I know for me personally, when I'm thinking about, going to a sporting event, indoors, outdoors, things like that, I'm contemplating the risk that it brings, and I'm honestly probably being a little bit more vigilant about wearing masks. That's kind of the precaution I'm taking on as well. But yeah, that's the big thing. Is it feels good that we aren't starting from place of zero, but it is still important to not let our guard up, which is really hard to say since I know we're all tired of this.
Yeah, it just seems to me, I mean, viruses mutate. So this is going to be, right? They the flu virus, other viruses have mutated, and that's why you get different flu vaccines. I would think that this could be expected now. Maybe it doesn't, the virus looks for ways to connect itself to other organisms. Again, this is outside of my area of expertise, but my understanding, and so this could be a reoccurring theme. But what about let me ask you about development of vaccines. Have they already, we already had the vaccines that were produced for I guess, the original strain. Are they working on Omicron specific vaccines? And I would imagine it would take as long as it did in the past for the other vaccines to produce.
Yeah, luckily not necessarily. Something we see a lot with the flu vaccines is they're able to kind of just input the information from the virus that they think is going to be circulating in a given year and kind of plant it onto an existing vaccine. And that's something you can kind of do with these mRNA vaccines. So I know Moderna and Pfizer are both exploring Omicron-specific booster shots, or I guess just new vaccines, however you want to think about them. I believe the timeline I've seen is about spring 2022. So that's about 4 months from now, 3 months from now. So it's a pretty tight deadline and pretty quick. The one thing I've been keeping in mind is it's going to really depend a lot. One of my reporters, Andrew Dunn, this week wrote about what it's going to take for us to need something like an Omicron-specific variant. And basically, he was talking to Pfizer's top scientists, and when it broke down to, the variant still needs to become the dominant variant in the world, right? If you look at case counts, Delta is still the dominant strain that's going around. And we also need to know how the vaccines stack up against Omicron. That's something we don't know yet, but say it reduces protection by like 80%. That might mean that our existing vaccines are good and they could hold up. If the protection drops quite significantly, that's when we'd probably have to start thinking about, okay, we may need another shot to combat this.
Well, as you said, we're just at the early stages of this. I mean, this was all the talk all the week about the virus. So I think more to come on that. We're going to have to leave it there, Lydia. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us and breaking down this important information. Have a great rest of the weekend, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Welcome back. Now we're going to close things out with a look at what has happened this week with markets, and I use that term broadly, but there's no person better that I would ask to do this than Oliver Reddick. He is the lead anchor for the TD Ameritrade Network. He actually hosts two shows, Morning Trade Live and Markets on the Close. Oliver, great to have you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jeff. Pretty fun week here for those who like to see a little volatility.
Okay, well, who are those people? Because I just like a straight line, Oliver, in terms of appreciation. But in all seriousness, it's we heard about the Omicron variant. That's the new the new keyword in the lexicon.
Edition.
Yeah, latest addition to the list of keywords or trends. How did that impact the markets, or did it impact the markets this week?
Well, we saw that the initial response to the virus last week was pretty pronounced, pretty clear, specifically most negative for sectors and companies that depend the most on travel returning to normal and life returning to normal. But within that same time period here of the last 6-7 days, we've also now had the realization that Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve are going to be more cautious in their approach in dealing with inflation, and thus plan to hasten some of their tightening timeline, firstly through the tapering process. So that's a really important piece of information in assessing these last 2 weeks. And generally, my view is that Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve is playing a bigger role in this market volatility. And there's some pretty clear evidence of that in a few of these signs that we see right now. We are getting the dollar continuing its strength. We are seeing that the high valuation, high growth, expensive companies are really being punished right now on the prospect of possibly higher interest rates. And we're also seeing a lot of companies that did great during last year's COVID quarantine get annihilated after earnings because their growth rates will not be the same, because ultimately, even with the variant, we are taking progressive steps towards a post-COVID world. So those things add up to a more compelling explanation for market weakness being tied to the central bank. And that's a really important factor here that definitely needs to be appreciated, and certainly is a complicating one, because while virus variants might come and go, the Fed's decision-making process here might be a little bit more durable in its impact on the market.
Yeah, and I think that you make a really good point. I mean, there are always current events that will have an impact on markets, whether it's something like this, it's war, conflict, you name it, it can have an impact. But I think what I'm hearing you say, just to make sure I understand it, and I'm a little slow, Oliver, but just to make sure I understand, I mean, really, it's more the thesis around what the Fed is going to do, because you said it. I mean, it looks like the virus is in some way, shape, or form, it's going to be like the flu. It comes around, there's going to be a variant, which viruses mutate, Oliver. So this seems to be kind of the, I don't have to tell you that. You went to, I think you're an engineer by trade, and you went to a really good school, so they probably taught you this.
I'm definitely not an epidemiologist, but no. I definitely agree. That's been my coverage too. I agree with you that in terms of like surprises right now, what are the surprises that it poses right now?
Yeah. Let's just talk about inflation for a couple seconds. Many American families, people out there, higher energy prices, higher food prices, higher durable goods prices, supply chain issues. That seems to be the main culprit impacting the day-to-day consumer. I'm not sure all those people are investors. They may be in some way, shape, or form through their 401k, but that seems to me the bigger story, the headwinds that we face.
That is indeed spot on, and why the Fed has had to take this change of tone, and that it just is too much for them to really ignore at this point. It's too much for them to stand by and act like they're asleep at the wheel when you have the Biden administration's main goal to be passing more stimulus. So that's difficult to do when inflation is the highest in 30 years. Difficult to do when your political opponents are warning about inflation and you are saying that it's going to be short-term, transitory, all these things. So that change of tone, I don't think coincidentally aligns with Jay Powell's reassignment to the job. Keep in mind he was just reassigned for his next term. So I think that the administration has to have some body of their administration signaling that they're not asleep at the wheel. So that's a pretty good job for the Fed to take here. Signal they're not asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, that's good, especially if that's your job. Last question, Oliver. When you look out in the week ahead, and here we are on Sunday talking this through, when you look out in the week ahead, what are you thinking about in terms of your programming, what your coverage is going to look like?
Well, at this point, it is trying to, as always, fit the pieces together. I mean, what we're always trying to do is find the best explanation for what's happening, follow the path of least logical resistance. It's why earlier this summer, I spoke and wrote extensively about why the bond market was actually pressing in this hawkish turn. It's been a centerpiece of our coverage, expecting this hawkish turn and following the dollar's upside as being a signal for this hawkish turn. So much of this we've very much been on top of, and the goal just continues to be the same, which is try and connect the dots in the most simple, straightforward way possible, and try and help them make decisions.
Yeah, well, here's the guy. This is the guy right here that cuts out all the jargon and lays it down, breaks it down for his audience. Oliver Rennick, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for stopping by, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
Bye. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives or see the latest shows? Then check out our partners on Roku, Amazon, Samsung, and over 100 different streaming platforms. We're back again tomorrow, this time for BRN AM. I'll be joined by a very special guest. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.